Not enough students realize what a massive opportunity you have to get a top score on the LSAT now that logic games are no longer on the test. Today, I'm going to walk you through what I would personally do if I wanted to score a 175 or above on the LSAT in November or beyond. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Now, back when I took the LSAT, of course, logic games were on the test. In fact, the LSAT was also on paper, and it was 5 sections. All of you out there are lucky because you have only 4 sections, and logic games are no longer on the test. For those who aren't aware, LSAC has removed the logic game section and replaced it with the second scored logical reasoning section. What this means is that there is less material for you to study. You could take all that time you would have devoted to logic games and instead devote it to logical reasoning, which means logical reasoning should be roughly 2/3 of your LSAT prep time, since it's 2/3 of the scored portions on the LSAT. Now, if you're taking the LSAT in November, a couple months away, I would recommend, of course, building a strong foundation in the different sections of the LSAT and the different question types. There are roughly 15 different types of logical reasoning questions, but not all of them show up in equal proportion, meaning some are more common than others. The 3 most common question types are necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. So you want to make sure that you master those before focusing on the rare types that hardly ever come up, like evaluate the argument, cannot be true, must be false, could be true except, and then there's annoying ones like parallel reasoning that show up only a couple of times per test. So you want to make sure that you are crystal clear on the most common types before moving on to the relatively less common types. And you also don't want to spend too much time drilling questions by type because, of course, on test day itself, the logical reasoning questions will not be bite-sized drilling by type. They will be in the context of a full section where you have a grab bag of all different types of logical reasoning questions, meaning you're also going to want to work on your LSAT pacing as well as your endurance, pulling it all together with full-length timed practice tests. So quickly, I want you to get out of the drilling phase when you're at roughly 70% accuracy or so, doing the questions by type, move on to pacing with individual sections, determining how you allocate your time over the course of the section. The logical reasoning is in a general order of difficulty, meaning you want to do the easier ones faster to build up a time bank that you can then apply to the tougher questions later in the section that truly need it. I recommend aiming to solve the first 10 questions in roughly 10 to 12 minutes, then saving up time for the tougher questions, slowing down on those, maybe flagging 3 or 4 of the most difficult ones, skipping them, and coming back to them later. So again, in case it wasn't clear, my hack for getting a top score on the LSAT going forward is focus on logical reasoning, focus on your accuracy, but also focus on your pacing. And you want to make sure that your test taking strategy is well laid out for yourself, that you're not just doing the questions in isolation here and there randomly, but rather that you are allocating your time strategically when it comes to logical reasoning, both when it comes to studying logical reasoning, as well as when it comes to actually solving logical reasoning questions on test day itself. Now, the hardest questions in LR are roughly 15 through 23 numbered in that section. So you want to maybe flag 3 or 4 of those, skip them, come back to them later, and you want to know which ones you don't like, which ones are going to be the best candidates for skipping. Personally, I like to skip questions that are abstract or formal logic in nature, things that are on hard science, things that are on philosophy, things that are worded the way that maybe a logic games question would have been worded on the old LSAT, lots of conditional language. I'll flag those, skip them, come back to them later, because the thing is, if they're going to be harder for me, but every question is worth the same on the LSAT, why would I risk getting bogged down on any single individual question? Rather, I want to knock out the remaining questions in the section, lock up those points, then and only then come back to the hardest questions where maybe a fresh perspective, a second look will help me break out of any previous tunnel vision and help me get that question right. Now, of course, you don't only want to work on pacing, you will also want to work on endurance, doing several full-length timed practice tests before the big day, so that test day itself will feel like just another run through. Now, if you're taking the LSAT in November or beyond, you've got plenty of time if you're doing maybe 2 practice tests a week, maybe even just 1 practice test a week, and reviewing it in depth. And you also want to make sure that you are simulating the extra unscored experimental section. On test day, you have 2 scored logical reasoning sections, 1 scored reading comp section, and then 1 unscored extra section of either logical reasoning or reading comp, meaning you could have 3 logical reasoning sections on test day, 2 scored, 1 unscored, and they can appear in any order, meaning that maybe your worst case scenario of 3 logical reasoning sections back to back could actually occur. And if you want to make sure that you're ready for this possibility, you want to make sure that your practice tests are simulating every possible combination, which is why at LSAT Unplugged, we create for our students personalized day-by-day study plans, laying out exactly what to do, including when to take timed practice tests and what those timed practice tests should look like. If you're interested in finding out more, you could check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.